What is love? Is it biological or some sort of crazy magic? For centuries we thought love was in the heart, but then, science led us to know that it actually happens in the brain. And love is considered to be one of the most powerful feelings that you can feel. But let's break it down. What actually is love? And how do you fall into it and out of it, and all that sorts of stuff. Songs and poems have been written about love. People do everything for love. Just ask Helen of Troy, who basically had this dude start a war just because he was simping so hard. Imagine dying just because this guy in charge of your country wanted this other guy's girl. I'd be upset. But anyways, I'm digressing. Let's talk about what love actually is. So on a basic level, love falls into one of two categories: passionate and compassionate. Passionate love is what you would typically think of when you hear the word love. It's like the flowers, chocolates, gifts, sexual attraction, that kind of love. Compassionate love is a little bit deeper. It's sort of like a friendship or a parent and a child, or, somebody who's been in a long-term committed relationship. The ancient Greeks took it a step further and broke love into 8 different types. There's eros, which is passionate love; pragma, enduring love; ludus, which is playful love; agape is universal love; philia is deep friendship; philautia is self-love; storge, familial love; and mania, which is obsessive love. Most of what we refer to as love can be explained by simple chemistry. You could even say that love has a chemical formula. Our brains produce a combination of feel-good chemicals, otherwise known as neurotransmitters. They make love unlike anything else. Certain neurotransmitters increase while others drop. Cortisol, for example, which is our stress hormone, increases. That is what causes that sort of nervous energy you feel when you first meet somebody you like. We then start to feel amorous because of our oxytocin levels increasing. Finally, our serotonin levels go up, giving that feeling of being obsessed with the other person. While most of these chemicals perform the same, whether you're male or female, there's one chemical that performs differently for each sex. For a woman, her testosterone levels go up. This causes her to be a little bit more aggressive. On the flip side, a man's testosterone levels go down, causing him to be more passive. Love isn't simply love. It's actually broken down into 3 separate categories: attraction, lust, and attachment. Each one of these categories has its own set of hormones produced by the brain. So let's start with attraction. It's that initial zing, the sparks flying and all that whenever you first meet somebody you like. Attraction is driven by a combination of 3 different hormones: dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Attraction stems from the part of our brain that controls reward behavior. So when something feels good to us, it releases dopamine. When dopamine levels are high enough, our brain also releases norepinephrine. Together, they create an intense combination of feelings, giving us that high most closely associated with being in love. We feel giddy, even euphoric. Brain scans of those in love show that these reward centers start firing like crazy when a person is shown a photo of someone they're attracted to. Serotonin is a hormone that can help stabilize our mood and create feelings of happiness and well-being. So during attraction, we have significant drop in our serotonin levels, and we experience intense, almost obsessive feelings of infatuation. The connection between low serotonin levels and a feeling of obsession is illustrated by those who have OCD, also known as obsessive compulsive disorder, because their levels of serotonin are consistently low, causing their extreme obsessions. Helen Fisher, an anthropologist, explains it as each having our own love maps. Each person is attracted to or turned on by completely different things. It can be big breasts, a great smile, nice eyes, even a uniform. Okay, so that's attraction. Now let's talk about the next one, which is lust. It sounds super biblical, but lust is whenever our bodies release testosterone and estrogen, and it just makes us feel the need for sexual gratification. Our evolution dictates the need to reproduce, which of course without that, humans would no longer exist. So in our brains, the hypothalamus tells our bodies to produce testosterone and estrogen. These hormones are not exclusive to men or women. In fact, testosterone is the key to increasing libido in both sexes. Estrogen may not be as powerful, but women especially see an increase in sex drives when they are ovulating and producing more estrogen. The last one is attachment. Attachment, of course, is the feeling of true connection. Our brains release both oxytocin and vasopressin. This, of course, helps us to form those long-term relationships. Unlike attraction and lust, which are associated with the romantic side of love, Attachment involves things like friendships, social relationships, the bond between a parent and child, and other close relationships. Oxytocin creates a feeling of closeness and is often referred to as the cuddle hormone. For a new mom, oxytocin increases when bonding with their little one. It can exist in combination with attraction and lust, or its own space entirely separate. On its own, attachment is the foundation of any long-term relationship. Attachment is the binding factor and the basis of friendship, often referred to as a friend zone, which I know you're very familiar with. These three categories of love can exist in different combinations. They can act together or separately. We don't necessarily need all of them to be, quote, in love. You can be in love with someone but not sexually attracted to them. And conversely, you can be sexually attracted to someone without being in love. Attraction and lust can exist both separately and together. So is it just a big old mix of chemicals that makes us fall in love? Not exactly. There are other factors that can influence how we fall in love with someone. Our outsides have just as big of an impact when it comes to being in love, obviously. One of those outside factors being the way we smell. Science tells us that for animals, smell is a big factor in attraction. But of course, this also plays out specifically for humans, just because each person has their own unique smell. So things like sweat and other bodily fluids contain chemicals known as pheromones. Men are most attracted to a woman when she is her most fertile, which is during her menstrual cycle. During that time, a woman's scent is different. Her face may even appear different when she is more fertile. In a study, a group of men were shown faces of different women. Almost 60% of them chose the women who were at the peak of their fertility. Another study showed that women are naturally drawn to a man whose scent had gene profiles that met their own. They were attracted to genes that resisted diseases and would produce strong, healthy babies. Women could even smell if a man was symmetrical or not. Which leads me to my next point. Symmetry is another physical factor when it comes to love. A symmetrical face is a standard when it comes to how attractive a person is. Having symmetrical features implies that someone has good genes. So the unfortunate souls with uneven eyes or a lopsided smile are, by those standards, less attractive. It's said that the unbalanced features give the impression that someone isn't healthy. Also, BMI or body mass index also affects attraction. BMI is a ratio of weight to height. A healthy BMI is found to be important because it can indicate overall health and fertility in both men and women. And to take it even further, someone's voice can sometimes help us be more attracted to them. When a woman is at her most fertile, her voice is seductive and can actually make a man's skin tingle. Hi, sisters! A few other findings is something as insignificant as a man's finger can reveal his testosterone levels. If his index finger is longer than his ring finger, he is more fertile, has a higher sperm count, and even has a healthier heart. So let's go back to genes for a second, because the way someone is physically made up also plays an important role. How a person is made up physically is important in love. This can be explained by evolution. Throughout history, men have been most attracted to women who are fertile, and women have looked for markers of masculinity. Now, some indicators of traditional masculinity include broad shoulders, a strong jawline. Things like this advertise dominance and good genes, which would lead to healthy offspring when poverty and diseases are a threat. Now, a curvy, healthy female advertises fertility. Now, of course, times have changed, and as a result, these masculine or feminine features don't always remain supreme. For example, how a woman views a man's masculinity is typically related to their economic status. Women who come from a poorer environment seek out traditional masculine features, while women who are more economically sound seek out men who appear more feminine. In a study by facesearch.org in 2010, 4,800 women were shown pairs of men's faces, almost identical except for slight differences. One photo was more masculinized and the other was more feminized. The women who came from countries that had healthier and more financially stable populations chose the photos with more feminized features. Those who came from a less wealthy or healthy country chose the more masculine photos. It was determined that these women who did not have concerns about health or financial stability chose men who exhibited less manly appearance. You see, women used to have to seek out mates who could provide and produce healthy children in order to survive. Today, women no longer need to due to better overall health and their ability to provide themselves financially. We are also attracted to those who possess the physical traits of those who we've had a positive experience or relationship with. So for example, our previous relationships and experiences in life affect who we are physically attracted to, meaning familiarity and similarity are important when it comes to show how attractive someone is to us. Beyond the physical, we are looking for someone with a similar brain as well, more specifically their personality. We're naturally more attracted to someone whose likes and dislikes closely match our own, and on a deeper level, our beliefs and values. So subconsciously, we choose the person who's most closely parallel to us. But one of the more interesting finds that I discovered was, as far as personality traits go, kindness had the greatest impact. Goodness is directly associated with beauty. It's referred to as a halo effect, which by the way, you can see kind of like right here. I got it, baby. Anyway, cringe time over. In 2014, a study of 120 participants illustrated this point. People were shown the faces of 60 women with neutral facial expressions. Half of those photos had positive personality descriptions below them, such as kindness and compassion, and the other half had negative personality descriptions, such as being mean or dishonest. Those that had positive descriptions received top ratings when it came to how attractive they were. So we reviewed a lot of information so far about how we fall in love. Now, can we fall out of love? How does that actually happen? And to answer that question, I think you should ask your divorced parents. But just in case you did have a healthy childhood and your parents are still together, let's explore that a little bit more. You see, our brains change when we fall in love, and they change again when we fall out of it. But it doesn't happen overnight. Our bodies and our brains go through changes again when we fall out of love. Now, to fall out of love, those neurotransmitters that first produce those fallen in love chemicals change. Our hormones are altered, and our brains go through sort of a love amnesia process. That's where we begin to forget certain habits and connections that were once associated with the person we loved. When being with someone no longer makes us feel good, our brains stop producing dopamine. Without dopamine, that person we once thought was so special is no longer the embodiment of our happiness. That is when our brains begin to rewire itself. Our brains are no longer linked to the reward center, which causes our feelings of connections and positivity towards that person to disappear. We are now connected to the fear center in our brain, and that's when the rose-colored glasses come off. What was once beautiful and shiny is now irritating. The other person's quirks and faults take the center stage. The process of falling out of love can take so long that we might not even realize it's happening. One thing that can cloud that reality of falling out of love is sex. Sex can actually trick our brains into thinking we're still in love. This is because it releases oxytocin and we feel that spark. But that's the spark that doesn't really last. And before you know it, you're back to square one. Now, if you fall out of love with somebody, can you actually fall back in love with them? Technically, yes, but it's not really that easy. You see, if you truly like someone, it is possible for that to become love. I mean, you were initially attracted to them based on traits you find favorable, such as personality or appearance. But because that one person possesses all those characteristics that are important to you, you can convince yourself that you are in love with them. Those traits or favorable characteristics, they actually cause us to be prejudiced against those who don't have them. What that means is if a person does not have what we consider most favorable, we couldn't possibly love them, no matter how much we like them. Whereas if the person checks off our list, we will tell ourselves that they will be everything we hope for and fall in love with them. Of course, sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not. Inevitably, falling in love is based on intention. How we love is preset. We have a set group of characteristics that are most attracted to, and they tend to push us in the direction of who we will love. Unless we completely reinvent ourselves, which is highly unlikely, we can't learn to love just anyone. We can't force ourselves to fall in love. It is the foundation of our beliefs and values that we have that will ultimately determine who we fall in love with. We are brought together with those who we can create a strong foundation with. But of course, over time, love changes. That initial attraction and lust does become attachment. That can't eat, can't sleep, can't breathe kind of love becomes something that is instead a place of calm and comfort. That new love is what helps us to avoid life's stresses, and we are in a place where we thrive on trust and compassion instead of just passion. And people who are really lucky somehow hold on to all three. Despite the scientific forces behind love, ultimately who you're attracted to is completely dependent on your individual preferences and makeups.
I came here tonight because when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible.
You see, scientists may never be able to figure out why you're attracted to one person and not the other. I mean, what really does make one person stand out in, the sea of people that is out there? Are these invisible forces that are playing the hand of love? Well, as we just learned, it's a whole bunch of different stuff, but I don't think you really have to worry about that because you're not really ever gonna find it. So it's safe to say you can just move on with your life and enjoy it. Speaking of enjoyment, if you did enjoy this video, consider subscribing. It helps me make more of these type of videos. See you next week. Love you like a headache.